Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland weekly update. Happy Friday. It's a beautiful day out. So much has happened this week. This could be my longest talk ever with all of you. It was extraordinary yesterday. I think we have to lead off with the Elon Musk, Donald Trump open air feud happening in real time. We saw it kind of devolve. Um, First, I want to say it is sad because I think it makes us look horrible to the rest of the world. Um, I think that it was inevitable that the separation between President Trump and Elon Musk would take place. Most thought it would be somewhere down the road and it would just be a parting of the ways that, they just really didn't have a lot to do with each other. You could tell that um, Donald Trump was ready for Elon Musk to go because probably a lot of the people in the House and the Senate had notified the White House, look, our constituents just don't want it anymore. And Elon Musk was hearing probably from the shareholders in his different companies that, look, this isn't good for you. It's not good for us. So it wasn't surprising that at the end of the 120 days that he was head of Doge as a non-governmental employee, that he would go. Last week there was a ceremony in the Oval Office. He showed up with a black eye, which there was an article where President Trump was pretty upset about that he refused to put makeup on it. Elon Musk said it was a punch that happened from his son, but Elon also does MMA and jujitsu, so it may have happened in training. Um, and Trump gave him a key that had the presidential seal on it and said such nice things about him. But he said, he started to say, Elon, it's time for you to go. So we talked about it last week. Elon did an interview with one of the news programs where he said that, he considered the big, beautiful bill that it can't be both big and beautiful at the same time, that it could only be big and beautiful. And that kind of started a little bit of talk that he was not pleased with the bill that the House uh, uh, approved by one vote 2 weeks ago and now is in the Senate. And, we were hearing from the senators this week, Hawley and obviously Rand Paul. He said that he didn't support the bill, and Trump then tweeted that Rand Paul is worthless and, he needs to be voted out of office. And, everybody said, look, these Medicaid cuts and the fact that this bill was going to add 2.5 trillion in 5 years and over a 20-year period was going to add almost $10 trillion to the national debt. um, you know Elon Musk, I guess, was upset, and rightfully so, that he and his group of Doge representatives worked very hard in their minds to cut a lot of programs to save money. And then in one fell swoop, this new bill enacts new spending programs and back and put things that he had cut off the table back on the table and refunded them. So yesterday, Elon called the bill abominable, and that's when Trump said, "Look, everybody wanted him to go," and then Elon just went off the rails. Um, Accused Trump of, you know, being involved with the Epstein matter and said that he was going to release um, what Trump's involvement with the Epstein files, and why the full files have not been released. He said that he was single-handedly responsible for electing Donald Trump president because of the $275 million he invested. He said that Trump should be impeached and that J.D. Vance should become the president. He said that he was going to decommission the rockets that take people to the space station. And then Trump, as Trump does, he responded and said, well, maybe we just defund all of your programs, the subsidies to the electric vehicle company, the contracts you have with SpaceLink, the space program um, funding that you get. And that's when it really, really got bad. And this is an argument or a fight, one that makes us look weak to the world. It's petty, um, but it also shows that you cannot beat Donald Trump. This is a fight that Elon Musk cannot win because the Republican House members and Republican Senate members are not going to go against Donald Trump to support Elon Musk and vote against this bill. The bill will get passed. Elon Musk said that, look, I'm going to outlive you. You have, 3 years left on your term. I'm going to live for 40 more years, and I got the money to break you. That may be true, may not be true. He loses these government contracts. A lot of his companies can go bankrupt. Yes, he's got a big platform with X, and he has his followers, and he threatened yesterday that he would start a new political party, and that he would use his money to oust all of the people who vote in the Senate and in the House for this bill. He maintained that if he didn't fund Trump's presidency, that the Senate would be a 51 Republican Senate and the House would be Democrat and Trump wouldn't be president. Trump said, I would have won Pennsylvania without your money. Um, and then at the end of the day, it seemed like it calmed down a little bit when Bill Ackerman and some other Wall Street tycoons said, look, this needs to be toned down. You guys are better together than apart. Um, so we'll see where this goes. But Donald Trump is not a man that will ever forgive. I think even yesterday he acknowledged, he said that everybody that comes to me, it's great until they leave, and then it's Trump derangement syndrome. No, what I think is that no one has ever had a consistent long-term relationship with Donald Trump. Um, Elon Musk is a guy that will cut his nose off and to spite his face. He'll burn his house down to watch your smoke. And I do not think that he is going to backtrack what he has said. So this is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Um, I was listening to Joe Rogan this week, and he was talking about that, we need to generate more Christian compassion in the conservatives today. That, yes, there is waste, fraud, and abuse in a lot of these foreign programs that you're cutting, but they should not cut off these programs so quickly. They needed to be studied. He said, like, for instance, water wells were cut off in Africa, and maybe you should give these people a year or 2 years notice that you're going to do this so that they can make alternative plans. He said that many of these Christian policies that have been cut in the U.S. aid department originated in the second George Bush presidency, and that they were in place to help the poor. And, we are a wealthy nation. We are wealthy people. Most of us are. And I think there is the Christian Judaic principle of helping out those that can't help themselves. So it was really interesting to see Joe Rogan say, hey, I'm all for these cuts, but they should have been done over time and not so abruptly on a day's notice, that these organizations couldn't pivot and try to get money from more benefactors instead of the government. Um, the question is, will the Senate pass the big, beautiful bill? I believe it will. I think the pressure from Trump, who will go on True Social or go on national TV and out that senator, will definitely uh, persuade them to go along with. Will it be different than the House bill that ultimately gets passed? Probably. Um, but it's going to push the national debt past $60 trillion. Senator Rick Scott from Florida, who was a governor and now runs the Republican reelection campaign for senators in the Senate, said that, there's going to be no room for spending once we hit $60 trillion, that most of the money that we'll allocate will have to pay the interest on the national debt. So it's going to be interesting to see. They're setting a goal that they hope this bill can be passed by the middle of July. The Senate will appoint a committee that will then go back to the House and see if they can reconcile The difference is to give a bill to President Trump, and any bill that comes to his desk, he will sign no matter what's in it. So, both Democrats and Republicans have no concept of deficit spending or decreasing our national debt. They only, both parties want to increase our national debt. So let's see how it all shakes out. Kilmore Abrego Garcia, who was the poster child for all these deportations to El Salvador, to that mega prison and other countries that we're now sending illegal immigrants and criminal illegal immigrants to, was finally brought back home after the Supreme Court said that the United States needs to facilitate his return. Um, we saw this week a sad case in the state of Washington where a homeless father killed three beautiful children. Can't believe that happened. I just don't understand why. I guess it's mental illness, why anybody would want to kill their own children or anybody else's children. Um, the Wall Street is starting to see that Trump is governing from his gut on tariffs, and that's a very dangerous thing. You saw the economic numbers this month that came out in May. They weren't good. There were less jobs um, that were produced, and also the growth had slowed down dramatically. Interest rates are still stable, but they're not coming down, and it doesn't look like the Fed is going to lower them, even though Trump sent out a tweet when these bad numbers came out and called Powell too late to the table. Powell, he implored him to lower the interest rates, which I don't think the Fed is going to do. The one thing that is really interesting that it has come out that now there's Republicans who are criticizing the Independent Congressional Budget Office, who was saying that the big beautiful bill is going to increase the national debt, saying that this is a partisan group and that they are doing this to undermine Trump. Now it turns out that when Trump came out last month and said, released some statistics that inflation is going down, the actual department is not really funded correctly right now, that they don't have enough people because Doge cut them, and that the numbers have been manipulated. So that's really interesting. What's going on in Gaza with Netanyahu is troubling. Yes, I was all for Israel going in and taking out got Hamas after October 7th, 2023, what happened. But I am not for the wholesale starving of people. And that is what is now happening in Gaza. Israel is not letting the aid come in that's necessary. And I think we're going to see in real time on TV people dying and starving to death. Yes, we see it in Africa in the UNICEF commercials, but we really don't see it. We don't think about it because it's been going on in Africa for so long with people starving in these various tribes. But in Gaza, I think it's going to be shown by on national TV, and I don't see a way that this is going to be resolved. They tried to do a ceasefire last week. Hamas wouldn't go along with it. They changed the terms. And Netanyahu cannot afford peace because if he affords peace and it happens, then his criminal trial against him, his son, and his wife will resume. There'll be an inquiry in how October 7th happened when, for 3 weeks, Israel was given notice that this um, plan by Hamas to invade Israel and kill Israeli citizens at this concert was known. And it's also going to come out on why Netanyahu had approved funding to be given from Israel to Hamas. So that's interesting. The 250th anniversary of the Army um, is on the same day as Donald Trump's birthday, and we're going to get a parade. Now there's a number of Republicans, Roger Wicker from Tennessee, who's saying we shouldn't be spending $50 million on this parade. What is interesting, though, is the Army anniversary is on the same day as President Trump's birthday. Of course, President Trump is saying it has no basis no connection. It's just a coincidence. But what is interesting is the Navy's 250th year anniversary is in September, and the Marines' 250-year anniversary is in November. What is different is they don't fall on President Trump's birthday. There's going to be no parade for the Navy, and there's going to be no parade for the Marines. So I think it is not coincidental that President Trump is doing this on his birthday to celebrate himself. And I think it's a waste of $50 million. Um, Trump has threatened to do things against certain businesses. He is now threatening Apple, if they don't put a facility here in America. Tim Cook has already said that they're moving their production of the iPhone to India. Trump has tried to single them out and threaten them with a tariff. Uh, you can't do that. You can't single out a company, just like he's doing with Harvard University. And I do agree with what he's doing with Harvard University. I think that um, we need to know who these foreign students are who are coming in to our country. Um, but it is not fair to some of these students that have offers to go to other Ivy League schools or Stanford or Vanderbilt or whatever, that they're going to be held in limbo. Trump has now said that no foreign students can come into Harvard University. I think he's going to lose in court on that because you can't single out um, a university. I think it has to be across the board. Trump also named 12 countries that are on the prohibited entry list in the United States. So that's kind of similar to what he did in the first term. Uh, Circling back to Steve Bannon, to Elon Musk, Steve Bannon and Elon Musk have been going at it for months and months and months. And Steve Bannon used the occasion this morning to say that Elon Musk should be deported, that he believes that he's not properly here as a U.S. citizen. He said that he needs to be investigated for his drug use and some other things. So everybody's using this opportunity to pile to uh, on Elon Musk. Trump threatens to cut millions and millions of dollars to many different programs. We talked about the universities. He said that he would now take the money that would go to the universities and give them to trade schools. I'm all for that. I think we need more trade. I think we need more um, technicians, of electricians and plumbers and of the like. When you look around, you don't see young electricians and you don't really see young plumbers. Um, the uh, Operation Spiderweb that Ukraine pulled off last weekend was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen against Russia. It was 18 months in the making, and they put drones in trucks and somehow got them inside of Russia and built houses where the roofs would open up so that the drones, when placed in these houses, could come out of the roofs. It took 18 months. They had to have inside people. It was not found out. And in unison, in 4,200 miles apart in Russia, that had something like 4,800 time zones on 11 different air bases. Ukraine took out 44% of Russians' long carrying airplanes that carried these big bombs. They killed their 2 out of the 6 AWAC planes that are used to monitor their country. And from what I heard, 2 of the planes don't even work before this happened and were used and being cannibalized for parts. So now they only have 2 AWAC planes left. Putin was made to look like an absolute fool. Uh, they have big borders. Obviously, they don't have border control. And when you look at what Israel did a year ago, when they took out the top leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah with the phones, when they blew up the phones in unison, and you see what Ukraine was able to do to Russia, to get inside and blow up these airplanes, it's extraordinary the technological capability of these countries. And you remember in February or March when Trump lambasted Zelensky in the Oval Office and said, "You have no cards to play." Um, Zelensky kept his mouth shut. And his cards that he had to play was he blew up their airplanes, which showed that he has a war plan. Now, I think what's going to happen is it's going to make this war go on longer. Obviously, President Trump spoke to Putin for 75 minutes yesterday. Um, and Putin said he's going to have to respond in kind, which he did last night. And President Trump didn't stand him down and say, no, he did not. This will extend the war. In fact, Trump said yesterday it's like two kids in the playground. You got to let them fight it out. And maybe this war needs to go on longer. Remember, this is a guy that said he would be able to resolve the war in 24 hours. Trump has the capacity at times to embellish, to actually state what he could do in plain terms that he can't do. He can't solve the Israeli Gaza war. He can't solve the Ukraine Russian war. One, because there's too much inner workings that he can't control. And two, we are not respected like we once were. And I'm not saying this because of Trump. Obviously, Biden was a weak president. I just got the book, Original Sin by Jake Tapper, going to read it this weekend. It does appear that he was mentally infirmed, and Trump is going to investigate his mental incapacity and the use of the auto pen on things. But we have gradually um, backtracked our place in the world that we are no longer respected like we were. And I think that Trump was very surprised that Ukraine was able to pull this off. He actually gave him a compliment and said, "Man, that thing was pretty amazing." But what was amazing is that Ukraine didn't tell the United States and didn't tell President Trump in advance that they were going to do this. And I think they did that because they don't trust him. They don't trust that he wouldn't have warned Putin to curry favor with Putin. And I think the same thing is going to happen with Israel and Iran. Trump was talking about the fact that we're so close to getting a deal done with Iran on nuclear weapons. We are not. The Ayatollah came out and said they're not going to give up their civilian use of nuclear power, um, which is an absolute must because we don't trust them. I think Israel's going to take out the nuclear facilities of Iran, and they're not going to give the United States advance notice again because they don't trust Donald Trump not to tell Iran. Trump is transactional, so depending on what side of the transaction he wants to be on, will tell you who his loyalties will go. And they also vacillate back and forth. So we shall see that. Let's see. Trump is now blaming the Federalist Society for giving him judges that are ruling against him because in a lot of his presidential orders, they are his appointee judges that are placing an injunction or saying that they cannot go forward on some of these tariffs and immigration policies. And he's now um, taking a public stance against Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, saying that it was a mistake to appoint her to the Supreme Court. So he's blaming the Federalist Society because they wrote a friend of the court brief in April, saying that his tariffs are a constitutional violation for him unilaterally putting these tariffs in play. And these tariffs are yo-yoing back and forth. I mean, now he's doing the steel and aluminum tariff on behalf of U.S. Steel to benefit Nippon in Japan. Nippon is going to acquire um, an interest in U.S. Steel. We don't know what the terms are. Remember, on the campaign trail, he said he would agree to Nippon Steel, a Japanese company owning United States Steel. Now he will not say how much Nippon will own after this deal. Trump said he was going to do 40%. The workers of the steel said, let's do 50% tariffs against steel coming into this country. That's not how you conduct policy. He was at announcing the U.S. Steel deal, and he was going to put a 40% tariff on, and the workers said do 50. Um, Chris Lee, he and his wife now have been released from prison. and he's talking big now about his pardon, about racism in the prisons, which is real. They are getting their own TV show. They're going to be millionaires back again. Now, I want to talk about something that's really important. I don't want to spark a debate, but um, Trump has revoked what's known as emergency room abortion requirements. In the United States, we have the Emergency Medical Treatment Act, which requires hospitals that have emergency rooms that have to provide emergency care to people regardless of religious beliefs, um, policy beliefs, or whether they have insurance and can pay for it. And that's what separates us from the rest of the world because we do provide this emergency care. And hospitals were required before President Trump wrote the letter to provide emergency abortions if women come to an emergency room and their life is at risk, that if the abortion doesn't isn't conducted, that the mother will not live. And they had to do it. Every hospital that had an emergency room that got federal funding had to do it. And now Trump wrote a letter and say it's optional. You don't have to do it. And let me explain something to you. Nobody goes to an emergency room for an elective abortion. If you go to an emergency room for an elective abortion, they're going to turn you away. It won't happen. But if you go to an emergency room with a medical emergency and you're bleeding out as a mother, and a hospital says that they're not going to perform the abortion to save your life, what we are going to have is mothers that are going to start bleeding out in parking lots in the hospital. So whether you're a pro-life or pro-choice, if you're pro-life, a mother should always be saved. And I think this is a repugnant policy, and I think we need to really understand it. We need to really talk to our congresspeople. Um, Taylor Swift got all of her musical catalog back, her first six albums. They're known as Taylor's versions. Um, I think she's now owns all of her concert music and her art. I think it's great. I just think it's unbelievable. Again, I said that Iran's going to reject Trump's nuclear deal. Um, he thought he could use the force of his personality to get them to agree. They're never going to agree to give up their nuclear ambitions. Um, a study came out this week that said 40% of Doge's uh, contract cuts will yield no savings. And as I said in the big new beautiful bill, many of those contracts are being reinstated. Yesterday, Pete Hegseth um, took the name off of a ship that was commissioned, the USS Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk was the first gay congressman that came out from California. He was served in the Navy during the Korean War, and now Pete Hegseth is looking at not approving the names of the USS Thurgood Marshall and the USS Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I agree. Wonderful people, amazing, amazing historical figures in our country, but they had nothing to do with the military and serving in the army or doing anything. And I think you can name buildings after them, courthouses after them, but naval ships should be named for war heroes. Um, Colorado, what happened in Colorado with the Egyptian guy who threw the Molotov cocktails and burned people that were in the ages of 52 to 84 years old, um, who every week do a peaceful rally in the downtown square in Boulder, Colorado, about the uh, hostages that are still being held by Hamas was just absolutely disgraceful. He overstayed his visa. Um, these people aren't anybody that you would hurt. They're just there peacefully, supporting that these hostages should come home. A judge temporarily blocked sending his family back with five children. They were immediately scooped up and taken from Boulder to an immigration prison in Texas. I think the wife knew what the husband was doing, and these people have to be removed from our country. Um, Blake Lively, in her suit, is dropping the claims that she has against Baldini for intentional infliction and negligent infliction of emotional distress. And why is she doing that? Because her mental health records, her prescription drug records, her counseling records all become an issue when you make those claims. When you seek damages for emotional distress, then the other party is entitled to discover your psychological history, your psychiatric history. And once the defendant Baldini's attorneys started subpoenaing some of her healthcare providers, she dropped those claims for emotional distress immediately. We're now looking at the hockey rematch in the Stanley Cup between the Oilers and the Panthers. Connor McDavid for the Oilers is really amazing. I think if he wins a Stanley Cup, he will be talked about in the same breath as Gretzky, as Lemieux, um, Ovechkin, and now McDavid. He's 28 or 29 years old. He's an amazing skater, amazing passer, always rises to the occasion. So I think it'll be great if the Oilers can win the Stanley Cup because we haven't had a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup um, since 1993. Bernie Kerrick died. He was 69 years old. He was the best friend of Rudy Giuliani. He was a big Trump supporter. He was the police chief during 9/11. He became a sad persona after he left office, same like Rudy Giuliani. He got indicted for tax evasion. He served 4 years in prison. He was pardoned by President Trump at the end of his first term. President Trump has also said he doesn't rule out a pardon for P. Diddy if convicted of sex trafficking. 50 Cent said he would try to persuade Trump not to do that. The P. Diddy trial that came out this week of him dangling women off of balconies. Um, he offered $100,000 in cash and gave it to the security guard at the hotel where P. Diddy beat up Cassie Ventura was came out this week. This guy is really the scum of the scum, but it'll be remain to be seen whether he will be convicted of racketeering. Um, After Operation Spiderweb, Ukraine then blew up part of the bridge that connects Russia to Crimea, where all of their supplies are coming in. So Ukraine strategically keeps doing things that will upset Putin, and I'm really scared that somewhere down the line, Putin's going to launch some kind of nuclear bomb onto Ukraine. Um, Trump says that Wednesday night was the last day that every country had a deal to send in their best and final proposal on tariffs. We haven't heard anything about it. He did have phone calls with President Xi yesterday where they agreed to continue to talk and meet, but he is threatening China because China is not complying with negotiating over these 90 days. We really haven't heard any trade deals because no country wants to do a trade deal with the United States because they're afraid that Trump will break it, just like he broke the United States, Canada, Mexico deal that he did in 2017. Um, I don't think we're going to see any trade deals. In fact, we haven't really seen a written trade deal that he touted with England that he had signed. So we're going to have to see where this goes. No deals are in place, and I don't believe we're going to really ever see deals. Italy's Mount Etna erupted. It's a live volcano. Panic tourists had to run for safety. We saw a smartphone that was smuggled out of North Korea this week that reveals some of the insane things that Kim Jong un does to control and suffocate his people. If you use certain words in your text messages or emails, they're changed by a program to make it more favorable to North Korea. All of your text messages and emails and phone calls are saved and logged with the Communist Party, and they'll find out if you're saying something. So it's amazing that this phone was smuggled out of North Korea. They check the searches that you do on the internet. Kim Jong Un is just a crazy man. I was talking about it with my friend Chuck Thompson last night. That you remember when he said that he first time he golfed, he shot like a 43, and he had 11 hole in ones. It reminded me when Scaramucci, who was the press secretary for 10 days before he got fired by Trump, said that he once saw Donald Trump in a suit, make five straight swishes from 3 points top of the keyhole on a basketball court in a full suit. Um, these guys do so much bullshitting that it's unbelievable. The Yankees got blown out hard last weekend, 2-1 in three games by the Dodgers. Uh, but the showdown between Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge just trading home runs is unbelievable. I think if we look at the four best athletes in sports that are heads and tails above everybody else, I think you got to say Ohtani and Judge, um, Connor McDavid in hockey, and certainly Patrick Mahomes in football. The most amazing thing happened that I was shocked at is the Knicks fired Tom Thibodeau this year, which I think was ridiculous. He took their team to one game away from winning the Eastern Division to be able to get in the championship series. They lost to the Pacers in 7 games. For two straight seasons, they won more than 50 games. That hadn't been done by the Knicks since 1990s when Patrick Ewing was there. He's taken them to the playoffs 4 out of the 5 years that he was there. Um, and each year they won more and more games. I do think that he doesn't use his full bench like other coaches do. He doesn't develop players. He's a little stubborn. He doesn't really have an offensive philosophy. He's a great defensive coach. And a lot of the Knicks' problems is that Jalen Brunson holds onto the ball too long. I think Carl Anthony Towns is not a good fit. They shouldn't renew his contract. They should send him off. Um, but if you go after Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Bucks, who I think is the best player in the NBA, you're not going to be able to have he and Jalen Brunson on the same court at the same time because both have to have the ball. Akapatuka likes to get the ball at the top of the key and take it to the hoop. So that is really going to be interesting to see who they hire as a coach. They lost one of the coaches, which was an assistant for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who went to the Phoenix Suns. Johnny Bryant is another coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers assistant that could come, but you got to get somebody different than Thibodeau. Danny Hurley, I think, took his name out of the running. He would have been a pretty decent pick. So if I was a betting man, maybe Jay Wright, who coached the three Villanova players, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges, may come and be the coach. He's a great coach. The problem is they can't get a lot of players because they gave up five first round draft picks to get Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets last year. Um, Maybe it'll be Johnny Bryant. Maybe it'll be Mike Malone, who was the coach of the Denver Nuggets that was fired 2 weeks before the season ended. He got uh, he has an NBA championship, but it's going to be uh, a real sideshow, a real circus. That's what James Dolan does. The Colorado Rockies are a hopeless baseball team. They are 10-50. And they could go down as the worst record in baseball history and in sports. So we shall see. Josh Allen and Haley Steinfeld, who's an actress, they got married this week, which is interesting. Aaron Rodgers was signed to a 1 year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's the biggest mistake in the world. He's in a division with Joe Burrow, who's a great, great quarterback, and Josh Allen. I don't see, and excuse me, Lamar Jackson. He's not better than them. Um, the Steelers have been to the playoffs 7 times since 2015, and they haven't won one game. Aaron Rodgers is an absolute cancer. I get it that he's better than Mason Rudolph, but you did draft Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback that won the national championship. But they really had no options. They didn't re-sign either um, Russell, Russell, the quarterback, or the Ohio State quarterback that played for them that now is going to the New York Jets. Again, I think it's going to be a circus. He's a locker room cancer. Scotty Scheffler won last week at the Memorial 2 years in a row. That hadn't been done since 2001 when Tiger won at Jack's tournament at Muirfield Village in Ohio. Scotty Scheffler now has 17 wins in 3.5 years, and the only other players in history that have done that are Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. It's starting to look like Scotty Scheffler is unbeatable. In his last 8 tournaments, he hasn't finished lower than eighth place. Um, every single 54 tournament lead that he's held over the last 2 years, 10 of them, he's held on and won. So he really is starting to be Tiger-esque. So now let's look at some of the questions that people have sent in. What are the legal implications of the video evidence showing Sean Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura um, and about the alleged $100,000 payment? I don't think Sean Combs can be criminally charged with that, especially since Cassie Ventura accepted money in return for that. I think too many years have passed. There may be a statute of limitations, but there could be a bribery claim for the $100,000 that was paid to the security guard for the tape. Um, what does Brianna Buglian's testimony, including claims of being dangled from a 7-story balcony and threats from Cohn, influence the prosecution's narrative? It just shows that this guy is a despicable person. If he did that, that could be construed as attempted murder. So I'm interested to see if any new criminal charges come from these trials. What challenges do the defense face in contesting the authenticity and admissibility of the surveillance video presented by forensic expert? It's very hard. These you have to try to say that these videos have been doctored. I don't think they're going to be able to show it. I think the beatdown that P. Diddy put on Cassie in the elevator lobby there on the floor wasn't doctored. I think he beat her. You saw it happen, but it's going to be a tough thing. Um, Brian Koberger, what are the legal considerations surrounding the defense's request to delay the trial due to media coverage violating a gag order? It may get delayed, but I don't think it's going to be pushed off too far. I still think the trial is going to take place where it is now. Um, can he get a fair trial considering all the pretrial publicity and leaked information? The answer is yes. Alex Murdaugh got a fair trial and everything was leaked in that case. Um, I don't think that's a basis for him to be able to declare that he cannot get a fair trial. Um, what are the legal and constitutional implications of the expedited detention and potential deportation of the family of Mohammed Sabri Solomon, the suspect in the Boulder firebomb attack? Um, I told you that 5 of his kids and his wife were transported to Texas. There was an injunction put in place that they shouldn't be deported. Um, they should get due process. They are entitled to due process. The 14th Amendment says that. The question is, how much due process are they entitled to? They were here on a work visa that his visa had expired, so they shouldn't get the same amount of due process the United States citizen gets or lawful residents gets here, but they should get due process, and they will. And maybe they should be deported. I find it hard to believe that his wife didn't know that he was making these plans, that we now know that he was on YouTube talking about Hamas. So I'm not sure that I would go to the well to keep those people in our country. Um, how might the U.S. Supreme Court's consideration of cases related to mass federal layoffs and deportation policies shape the balance of executive power? That's where it's going to come down to. And the key vote on this is going to be um, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, and Amy Coney Barrett. I think that Alito and Clarence Thomas are gone. However, Trump criticizing the Federalist Society. They are key members of the Federalist Society. So him going to war with the Federalist Society could hurt him with every Republican Supreme Court justice, including Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. But I do think that we're going to have reasonable um, rules put in place. We do not want a king. Our Supreme Court does not want a king. So I think that they're going to establish real due process policies for people who are going to be deported and the federal layoffs. I think they're going to rule that Congress has to do that once funds are appropriated. So the last question is under sports law. How does the recent NCAA proposal to allow direct payments to athletes contingent on the antitrust settlement redefine the legal landscape? I think that it's going to be totally professional at this point. Ed O'Bannon was the athlete that challenged the name, image, and likeness being used by the NCAA on their videos. And that's what opened up the floodgates that now athletes can be paid. I think you saw this week that Cooper Flag was paid $28 million under two contracts last year under his NIL. 28 million. He may not even earn that as the first pick in the draft next year. So I think that sports is a real problem right now. The money in college athletics is a real problem. I think there's going to be more money paid in college athletics, to be honest, than pros make in football. What legal precedents are being set by the lawsuit filed over 1,000 former rugby players um, alleging negligence in protecting them against brain injuries? Okay, let's stop. Football is one thing because they provide protective gear for them. But rugby, everyone knows, is a violent physical sport where people get concussions all the time. They don't wear helmets. The scrums are headbutts against each other. So I think this one is a bridge too far for me. So that's it for the Anything But Bland weekly update. 47 minutes. I think it's the longest one I've ever done. We covered so much territory. I appreciate you listening. Bye bye.